Winter arrived not gradually, but as a sudden assault on the Midwest, with an intensity typically seen only in deep January. In one instant, roadways carried steady holiday traffic. Moments later, they vanished beneath an impenetrable curtain of snow so dense it obliterated the landscape. Motorists traveling Interstate 70 transitioned from normal highway speeds to battling for vehicle control as visibility plummeted to nothing. Tires lost their grip and ice formed on roadways faster than plows could remove it. In mere moments, vehicles began spinning out of control. Large trucks slid like massive freight cars on glass surfaces. The nation observed in shock as a massive 45-vehicle collision developed in real time along Indiana's vital transportation artery. This represented no typical winter weather event. It was an extensive multi-state weather system extending from Iowa through Michigan, depositing over 8 inches of substantial snowfall into metropolitan areas, battering rural communities with complete whiteout conditions, and generating thundersnow phenomena across Chicago. O'Hare and Midway, two of the nation's busiest aviation centers, descended into turmoil as flights were grounded, aircraft became ice-covered, and travelers remained stranded through the night while de-icing teams struggled to maintain even limited runway operations. Throughout Illinois and Indiana, the storm's sounds became impossible to forget. The howl of powerful wind gusts racing across exposed highways, the scraping sound of plow equipment against pavement, the impact of vehicles striking barriers, and the distant boom of thunder reverberating through the falling precipitation. What started as a standard early-season cold weather system transformed into a transportation catastrophe, stranding households returning from holiday celebrations, forcing truck drivers to desert their vehicles in ditches, and leaving emergency personnel overwhelmed as collision after collision cascaded through the area. This was the storm that refused to wait for winter's official arrival. This was the storm that turned the Midwest upside down and demonstrated once more that when snow arrives rapidly and visibility disappears entirely, even the most robust road systems can disintegrate within seconds. The storm didn't merely pass through the Midwest, it consumed it entirely. From Iowa's plains to Illinois' industrial corridors, from rural Indiana to Michigan's snow-buried highways, the complete region found itself under siege by an expansive winter system that appeared to intensify hourly. Weather forecasters had cautioned about a possible early-season occurrence, but no prediction fully anticipated the magnitude, ferocity, and velocity of what transpired. Dense snow bands started developing before dawn, propelled by an influx of Arctic air meeting deep moisture streaming from the west. As the weather front advanced eastward, snowfall rates jumped to 1 to 2 inches hourly, rapidly overwhelming principal roadways and burying neighborhoods beneath a substantial frozen layer. Chicago endured the storm's complete intensity explosion. The city's famous skyline disappeared behind a barrier of spinning snow as gusts hammered across Lake Michigan, pounding the downtown loop with freezing crosswinds and sending precipitation flying horizontally along the Magnificent Mile. The storm showed no preference. Suburban streets, rural agricultural towns, and interstate routes all vanished under the identical blinding white obscurity. Plow vehicles operated continuously, but new accumulation buried their efforts almost immediately, transforming 4-lane expressways into barely discernible snow-choked passages. Further eastward, Indiana prepared itself as radar illuminated with concentrated blue and purple bands extending from Illinois. These weren't ordinary snow showers. They were compact, forceful bursts that reduced visibility to nearly zero, covering pavement with a dangerous combination of sleet, ice, slush, and heavy snow. Dense snow bands started developing before dawn, propelled by an influx of Arctic air meeting deep moisture streaming from the west. As the weather front advanced eastward, snowfall rates jumped to 1 to 2 inches hourly, rapidly overwhelming principal roadways and burying neighborhoods beneath a substantial frozen layer. Chicago endured the storm's complete intensity explosion. The city's famous skyline disappeared behind a barrier of spinning snow as gusts hammered across Lake Michigan, pounding the downtown loop with freezing crosswinds and sending precipitation flying horizontally along the Magnificent Mile. The storm showed no preference. Suburban streets, rural agricultural towns, and interstate routes all vanished under the identical blinding white obscurity. Plow vehicles operated continuously, but new accumulation buried their efforts almost immediately, transforming four-lane expressways into barely discernible snow-choked passages. Further eastward, Indiana prepared itself as radar illuminated with concentrated blue and purple bands extending from Illinois. These weren't ordinary snow showers. They were compact, forceful bursts that reduced visibility to nearly zero, covering pavement with a dangerous combination of sleet, ice, slush, and heavy snow. Motorists described feeling their tires surrender traction without warning. Semi-trucks fought to remain upright as crosswinds forced them across traffic lanes. Rural routes disappeared beneath drifts that accumulated against barriers and forest edges. By afternoon, the storm had expanded so extensively that weather alerts stretched from Montana to Ohio, encompassing millions of residents under winter storm advisories and travel warnings. Weather analysts tracked moisture streams feeding directly into the system, characterizing it as unusually powerful for this period of the year. And as temperatures dropped into the low 20s, the snow only intensified, thickened, and grew more hazardous, establishing conditions for the devastating incidents that would soon emerge on Interstate 70. The storm's concentrated fury manifested itself on Interstate 70, one of the Midwest's most essential east-west transportation corridors. What should have constituted a standard drive through western Indiana became a catastrophe that developed gradually, then suddenly, as complete whiteout circumstances swept across Vigo County. Motorists barely had opportunities to respond before the landscape ahead vanished in a solid wall of blowing snow. Visibility declined from a quarter mile to merely feet within seconds. Headlights transformed into dim glimmers, taillights vanished completely. And with the roadway covered in a lethal mixture of slush, ice, and fresh snow, even gentle brake pressure was sufficient to send vehicles sliding uncontrollably across lanes. It began with several cars losing traction, rotating sideways, drifting into the median, or sliding toward the shoulder. But then additional headlights emerged through the blinding snow curtain. Motorists applied their brakes, but the wheels locked immediately. Tires glided across ice as if on polished glass. One SUV crashed into the rear of a sedan. A pickup truck skidded sideways and struck a semi. And within minutes, the chain reaction detonated. Vehicle after vehicle crashed into the expanding pile until more than 45 cars, trucks, and semis were piled, contorted, and dispersed across the interstate. Traffic surveillance cameras documented the chaos in real time. Cars wedged against barriers, semis jackknifed across both lanes. Complete sections of the roads submerged under accumulated snow. Some vehicles were forced down grassy slopes, while others balanced on the shoulder, frozen at improbable angles. First responders had to navigate through the identical whiteout circumstances just to access the scene, maneuvering slick pavement and wind gusts that pushed snow horizontally like smoke from a wildfire. Remarkably, despite the collision's violence, there were no critical injuries. Approximately a dozen individuals sustained minor to moderate injuries, cuts, bruises, whiplash, but local authorities credited seatbelts, decreased speeds, and driver cooperation for preventing what could have been a mass casualty tragedy. Nevertheless, the pileup closed the westbound lanes for hours. Tow trucks, firefighters, and state police labored through punishing circumstances to separate vehicles individually, removing metal, shattered glass, and snow-packed debris from the roadway. The scene became a striking symbol of how rapidly winter can overpower everything: traffic, visibility, and even experienced drivers when the storm strikes with maximum intensity. Interstate 70 wasn't simply closed, it was brought to its knees, frozen beneath the weight of a storm that refused to diminish. While Interstate 70 was collapsing under a barrier of whiteout chaos, Chicago, the Midwest's central pulse, was being battered by one of the most disruptive winter occurrences the city had experienced this early in the season. What commenced as consistent snowfall rapidly escalated into a complete atmospheric onslaught. Dense snow bands swept across the Lake Michigan coastline, reducing visibility throughout downtown to a ghostly haze. The legendary skyline faded into the storm as wind gusts pounded the city, blowing snow horizontally along Michigan Avenue and swirling around the L tracks like frozen smoke. By early evening, the storm intensified further, unleashing something Chicagoans seldom witness: thunder snow. Lightning flashed through the falling precipitation, illuminating the sky in brief, haunting bursts as thunder resonated between skyscrapers. In a city accustomed to severe winters, thunder snow is the unmistakable indication that conditions have reached another level. And the impact was instantaneous. Chicago's aviation infrastructure, one of the largest globally, crumbled under the storm's force. O'Hare International Airport, a crucial national hub, saw waves of cancellations cascade through its terminals. Dozens of aircraft sat immobilized on the tarmac, wings covered with thick ice layers, despite the continuous work of de-icing crews spraying heated glycol into the air. Airlines issued emergency travel waivers, permitting passengers to reschedule flights without penalties as screens filled with red canceled and delayed notifications. Midway Airport experienced the same fate. Smaller but equally important to regional travel, Midway struggled to maintain even a single runway operational. Snowplows operated continuously in tight formations, clearing paths that closed again within minutes as snow continued falling at 2 inches per hour. Travelers were stranded overnight, sleeping on terminal floors, wrapped in jackets and blankets, while airport personnel distributed water, snacks, and updates that changed constantly. The chaos didn't end at Chicago's boundaries. Because O'Hare is a major hub for domestic and international flights, cancellations in Chicago triggered a nationwide domino effect. Connecting flights in Denver, Atlanta, Dallas, and New York were suddenly grounded. Passengers hundreds of miles distant found their trips canceled because their incoming aircraft never departed Chicago. Airlines scrambled to reassign crews as weather delays pushed staffing beyond federal shift limits. Meanwhile, on the roads surrounding the city, circumstances deteriorated equally rapidly. Lakeshore Drive turned slick and treacherous, with cars creeping at walking pace. Suburban expressways saw spin-outs every few miles. Even Chicago's famously battle-hardened commuters struggled to navigate through white-knuckled stretches where lane markings were completely erased. Chicago didn't just experience a snowstorm. It became the storm's industrial-scale impact zone, where every component of the city's vast transportation network, road, rail, and air, was tested and pushed beyond its limits. This was the moment the Midwest realized the storm wasn't weakening, it was expanding. As the storm pushed deeper into the Midwest, the region's extensive network of highways, normally the foundation of America's holiday travel, collapsed under the sheer weight of snow, ice, and hazardous visibility. Interstate corridors that extend for hundreds of miles across Illinois, Indiana, and beyond became gauntlets of peril, where even veteran drivers found themselves powerless against nature's force. I-70, I-55, I-80, and I-90, some of the busiest freight and passenger routes in the nation, turned into slow-motion disaster zones. In Illinois, the snow descended in thick waves, coating the Dan Ryan, Eisenhower, and Kennedy expressways with slick ice layers beneath fresh accumulation. Cars struggled to maintain traction even at reduced speeds. Semi-trucks fishtailed across lanes as crosswinds whipped through open interstate stretches. Roadside barriers and overpasses became collision hotspots as drivers hit patches of black ice they couldn't detect until too late. State troopers responded to so many spin-outs and slide-offs that they warned drivers against traveling unless absolutely essential. Meanwhile, in Indiana, conditions deteriorated even more rapidly. The storm deposited a dangerous mixture of sleet, freezing rain, slush, and heavy snow that layered the pavement with unpredictable textures. Slick in one instant, mushy the next, and solid ice the moment after. Tires struggled to grip. Anti-lock brakes clicked violently as vehicles fought for stability. Cars slammed into guardrails, pickup trucks slid down embankments, and plow crews working in continuous rotations were forced to choose between clearing major lanes or responding to vehicles blocking the roadway. Rural counties suffered even more severely. Long open farm roads became wind tunnels where snow drifted into piles 2 to 3 feet high, swallowing fence lines and creating instant whiteouts that blinded drivers. Emergency responders in smaller towns were overwhelmed by calls, ranging from minor slide-offs to multi-car crashes blocking both traffic directions. Volunteers with four-wheel drives were summoned to shuttle stranded residents to safety. Navigation apps offered no refuge either. With so many accidents and closures, rerouting systems sent drivers down secondary roads that were even worse, unplowed, unlit, and covered in untouched ice layers. Many motorists found themselves trapped behind long lines of hazard lights, waiting for plows and police to inch their way through miles of stalled vehicles. Every hour, travel conditions worsened. Every minute, new accidents were reported, and every mile of highway became another reminder of how vulnerable even America's most engineered roads can be when winter arrives with this level of force. By nightfall, the Midwest wasn't just dealing with a storm. It was facing a complete transportation breakdown, a moment when the road network that keeps America moving simply froze in place. Behind the flashing emergency lights and endless lines of stranded vehicles, the storm's most profound impact was felt on a human level. This wasn't just a travel nightmare. It was a moment when thousands of people across the Midwest realized how quickly a routine drive home could turn into a life-threatening ordeal. Families returning from Thanksgiving celebrations suddenly found themselves trapped on icy highways for hours. Heaters running low, phones losing battery, and snow piling against their doors faster than they could clear it. Parents tried to calm frightened children in the back seat while checking weather updates every few minutes, hoping to hear that plows were finally getting closer. Emergency responders reported a constant stream of injury calls. Drivers suffering whiplash from unexpected collisions, passengers bruised as cars slid into guardrails, and several motorists needing treatment for early signs of hypothermia after waiting too long in freezing vehicles. Paramedics in Illinois and Indiana worked under brutal conditions, navigating snow-packed roads, dodging oncoming traffic in whiteout conditions, and fighting bitter 20-degree Fahrenheit wind chills as they moved victims to safety. For many, the fear of being hit by an oncoming vehicle in near-zero visibility was as intense as the storm. At the same time, hospitals across the region began to feel the pressure. In Chicago, emergency rooms saw a jump in injuries not only from highway crashes, but from slip and fall accidents caused by icy sidewalks and parking lots. Nurses described an evening filled with patients suffering from fractures, head injuries, or sprains after losing their footing on refrozen slush. In Indiana, medical centers near the I-70 corridor activated surge protocols as victims from the 45-vehicle pileup arrived in waves, thankfully with mostly minor injuries, but enough to strain already thin holiday staffing. The emotional toll was just as heavy. Truckers who had been on the road for days broke down after witnessing collisions unfold in front of them. Elderly travelers stranded in airport terminals due to mass flight cancellations struggled through long, exhausting waits as they tried to rebook flights. College students heading back to campus after Thanksgiving weekend slept in their cars wrapped in jackets, hoping temperatures wouldn't drop further before help arrived. On social media, videos of the blizzard went viral, snow swallowing entire vehicles, thundersnow flashing above Chicago, and lines of semis sitting motionless for miles. For many viewers, the footage felt surreal. For those living through it, it was terrifyingly real. As the storm finally began to weaken, one truth became clear. The Midwest had just endured one of the most disruptive early-season winter events in years. It wasn't just about the inches of snow or the number of crashes. It was about the thousands of personal stories shaped by a storm that struck at the worst possible time, leaving behind a shaken, exhausted region still trying to get home. As the Midwest slowly digs out from this massive winter blast, one lesson stands out clearly. Storms like this aren't just inconveniences. They're reminders of how quickly life can change when snow, ice, and wind collide at the wrong time. From the thundersnow over Chicago to the 45-car pileup on Interstate 70, from the frozen highways of Indiana to the stranded passengers sleeping on airport floors, this storm didn't just disrupt travel, it tested the resilience of an entire region. But through the chaos, we also saw incredible strength. First responders pushing through whiteout conditions, communities helping stranded drivers, families checking on neighbors, people doing whatever it took to get through a night that felt endless. And now, as the final snowflakes settle, the question remains: is this just the beginning of a harsher winter season? Meteorologists say early season storms are becoming more intense, more unpredictable, and more capable of shutting down entire states in a matter of hours. So stay prepared, stay alert, and above all, stay safe. Thank you for watching and staying informed with us. If this report helped you, don't forget to like the video, share it with others, and subscribe for more extreme weather coverage. And tell us in the comments, do you think early season winter storms like this are becoming the new normal in America, or was this just a freak event? Your voice matters, and we read every comment.